Hey listeners, welcome to the NetSuite podcast. I'm Megan O'Brien, co-host of the podcast, and today we're continuing our CFO Agenda series with Brian Hogeland. Brian's the CFO of Packer Fastener, a rapidly growing distributor of nuts, bolts, and other industrial supplies. Brian sits down with NetSuite podcast co-host Ian McCue and walks him through his background and how roles across finance and technology prepared him for the C-suite. He then explains how Packer Fastener has grown beyond its roots as a regional distributor, despite supply chain and inflationary challenges, as well as the specific framework it's used to drive the business forward. The CFO explains how NetSuite helped the company manage its growing operations, which includes actively stocking 30,000 items, and specifically the value it's gained from NetSuite Analytics Warehouse. With new technologies demonstrating potential to reshape the work of the finance team, Brian shares what skills he thinks will remain critical for finance professionals. He also offers perspective on what he looks for when he's hiring and how leaders can attract top finance talent. Brian then sheds light on Packer Fastener's ambitious plans for 2025. He walks through potential challenges, technology initiatives, and how he's preparing his team to leverage new AI tools. Stay tuned because all of that and more is coming momentarily.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
So Brian, let's start with a bit about your background and who you are. Was your plan always kind of to work in finance and hopefully become a CFO one day?
I graduated from college in the mid-90s, and the internet was this really cool thing that had just popped at the time. So I was graduating with a degree in accounting. Really had been talking to a lot of CPA firms to come and join them, but was really intrigued by this whole World Wide Web concept. I went into my library my last semester of college and actually bought tickets for the Grateful Dead. Actually sent in like a money order back in the day, but so it was this whole new exciting environment. And so while I had obviously the discipline and the skills to understand finance, I was really intrigued by this technology part. So a couple of years after I started my career with Arthur Andersen, I moved over into a technology consulting role and really had a lot of fun with that, embraced it, and spent probably the next 10 years of my career doing technology. So it kind of went from being, aspiring to maybe be like a CPA partner doing audits and tax work to maybe really hands-on technology roles. And probably around 2010, I moved back into a typical finance role. So that's where I kind of started to do more of the progression, the typical financial leadership roles.
And I guess why did you decide to go back into kind of the traditional finance accounting side after being more on the technology side for a while?
Yeah, certainly there's an analytical aspect of all the financials, right? So that was intriguing. The company I had worked for at the time had just onboarded a significant Oracle, actually, ERP solution. And they were looking for somebody with a finance and technology background to kind of help stabilize that implementation. And it was a chance for me to really get back into the finance world, but still not have to stretch too far. Same company, obviously into the solution, the technology solution. So really kind of trading hats within the same company. And I'd be lying if I said, getting the pager calls at 3:00 in the morning because somebody couldn't log in might have had a factor in that switch too. But yeah, definitely I liked the stability and the analytical nature of the finance teams.
And as you kind of reflect on some of those past roles and your progression through your career, were there any particular positions that you feel like really helped you prepare to where you are today running a finance department for a really fast growing company?
So I worked for a large transportation company for 16 years. And as I moved back into that financial role that I mentioned earlier, there was certain stops along the way there that there was a corporate accounting role focused really on a month-end close process in a large company. So you're having to really gather a lot of different teams together, make sure that executing on a financial close, there's very specific tasks that have to happen in certain orders. So kind of that monthly close discipline. I moved from there into an internal audit leader role, so focusing on the audit and compliance and risk management, working with our board of directors at the time. We went through an initial public offering during my time with that, and I'd been through several IPOs in the past, but it was really working with bankers and lawyers and auditors through that process. And then as again a next evolution, that same company was into a more like a segment controller role, where you're focusing a lot on here's how a business financial person looks at things. Here's partnering with some of the more business leaders. How are they analyzing a problem? How can I help support that? Giving some insight into budgeting and tracking how you're doing against some of the metrics and the goals. Doing financial modeling for specific scenarios. Those all were progressively important, I think, in getting me to the spot where I'm at today.
It sounds like you kind of added like more and more strategic tasks, right? When you talk about things like IPOs and modeling. So you started to move beyond, well, first it was accounting, then you started moving into tech, and then you kind of paired them together and started taking these more strategic type, I guess, roles and responsibilities. Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, and some of it was opportunistic, some of it was intentional. There's a point where you're looking at, for example, as we became a public company, having to manage the Sarbanes-Oxley function as a public company, not something I was super interested in. Anybody that's listening to this that's been through a Sarbanes-Oxley environment knows that it's not exactly the most efficient use of our time. And so really trying to move into more of a, how can I learn more? How can I help grow a profitable business? That was a very intentional move.
Awesome. And moving into your current role at Packer Fastener, first off, could you just share with our listeners what Packer Fastener does?
Sure. So Packer Fastener is one of 8 different entities within our umbrella. This specific business buys and sells nuts and bolts, kind of a very simply stated. We have a warehouse full of threaded fasteners. And we sometimes move into safety equipment or paint and caulk types of solutions there. We have vending where we will drop vending machines at our customers and fill those vending machines. We have vendor managed inventory, customer managed inventory, some consignment. But it's really out there trying to support electrical contractors, HVAC contractors, manufacturers, a lot of construction. So as we've seen a lot of increase in construction spending, particularly over the last couple of years, we've been able to help our customers grow in that space as well. So it's really focused on, again, sort of low tech nuts and bolts in a really growing environment.
And Packer Fastener has been around since 1998, so you guys have fairly lengthy history at this point. But the business, it sounds like, has really focused on expanding in the past decade. Could you just talk a little bit about how the company's grown and how it's evolved in more recent years?
Sure. Long before I started with the company, there was a real focus, probably around 2014, a very strategic focus instead of kind of being a, sort of a small Green Bay, maybe Northeast Wisconsin distributor, really focused on how can we grow. Our CEO really came with a lot of perspective on trying to provide opportunities for those around him, really focusing on how can we intentionally set BHAGs, what's our big, hairy, audacious goals? How can let's sit down and define who we are? What are the markets we intend to serve? We have this concept of flywheel where it's, how can we take different parts of our business day in and day out and feed the rest of it and essentially get this kind of like a flywheel concept, take that and keep it growing and spinning and making the business faster and better. So it was a very intentional focus around that time in 2014. And over the years, I joined the company in 2021. So focusing on growing the business significantly. So we set pretty lofty goals each year in revenue and volume growth. We meet with a strategic coach 4 times a year. He helps us get realigned on we call them rocks. We kind of subscribe to the whole traction EOS enterprise operating system model. So we focus on our rocks each quarter. We set new rocks. We check in how are we doing on those rocks, and all of that really fuels this strategic growth. So these BHAGs that you set years ago sort of just happen. It isn't really a surprise when you set 3-year goals and look back and say, gosh, we ticked off 95% of those 3-year goals that we set. So it's a really intentional, disciplined focus that's, I think, has really helped our organization grow.
And what does that look like for the business? Like you said, Packer Fastener is just kind of one arm, maybe the biggest arm, but still just one arm of the business. So what is that? How is, how have those big goals, and that kind of strategic thinking manifested in terms of what the business is now versus what it was 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I would say it's when you put yourself in a position where you're setting goals to grow and then holding yourself accountable and you're incenting people on that growth, people start to think differently about it, right? So you wake up and every day you come to work and maybe you're focused on, well, I have this goal. Everything gets reset at zero on January 1st. And so how am I going to grow and meet that annual goal? How am I going to meet these monthly goals? And breaking those really big goals down into smaller, more manageable pieces for each department. So this whole traction EOS model has this notion of setting strategic goals up here, but then you sort of cascade down to the different teams, ultimately all of them supporting that larger goal. And that's really, it's taken time, but it was very methodical rollout. Now all the different departments, we have our weekly L10s, we call them. Again, people that are familiar with this model, they get the L10 concept, right? So we have weekly L10 meetings where you focus on, hey, what are my rocks for the quarter? What are the company rocks? How am I supporting all of that? It's very intentional, very methodical. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. What have been some of the biggest challenges for the business as you've grown quickly and expanded and kind of thought differently about what the business could be?
Certainly people. People is our biggest challenge. We believe strongly, I mentioned the flywheel earlier, that starts and ends with people. So we want to hire, we want to retain really good people. We have a very strong culture, really focused on 12 different specific pieces that we call swagger. And we want people that are really subscribed to that buy into that. And so finding people out there that match that's sort of that swagger, and then finding enough of them to continue growing the business, right? So all of our growth is geographic growth. It's landing new customers. It's supporting more vendor managed inventories. A lot of that requires people to do that. And so really finding the right people that match our skill sets, our culture is probably one of the biggest challenges. And then the flip side of that is we have really good retention. So we have a kind of a running joke here that it's harder to get into our company than it is to get into Harvard. Number of job postings that we have, where the applications we have for a particular job posting, there's fewer people that are accepted or hired when you compare it to Harvard's acceptance rates. So we take a lot of pride in that. We have a lot of really good people. We really try to nurture that. But in order to keep the company growing, we have to keep feeding that funnel, right? So that's a significant challenge for us. A lot of the other challenges we've had, supply chain issues that were really prevalent during COVID and all the inflation that came with that. Those are pretty significant items we had to navigate through. And even just on the horizon here with a lot of talk about tariffs and, sort of deglobalization, we're, anticipating some of those things that are going to continue to be challenges for us. So like a lot of companies, we had to sort of dust off the playbook and figure out inflation really hasn't been an issue for 40 years, but we got to deal with it. How are we going to manage that? How are we going to make sure we're still profitable? You'll have to pass along some of those price increases to your customers. Those aren't always fun conversations. And so those have been really, really important goals for us to make sure that we continue on and continue to expand.
What do you think was key to continuing to grow through that, to grow through especially some of the supply chain and inflationary challenges? Like what approach do you think worked for you guys?
Yeah, so a lot of it was we have good relationships with our vendors. We have several key vendors that supply us a good chunk of our inventory that we buy and sell to our customers. And so maintaining those positive relationships, being really open and candid with our vendors and vice versa, them really having these strong relationships where there's really honest feedback. That's been really, really helpful navigating, keeping, consistent partners instead of flipping around back and forth. Maybe you'll find the lowest price here, but in the end, you're maybe not necessarily getting the same delivery, the same timelines. Pricing can fluctuate all over the place when we focus on those strong relationships on the vendor side and also on our customers. We want to make sure that we've got open dialogue with the customers. We want to go in and explain to customers that, hey, this is the nature of the world right now. We can't get the inventory that you're looking for without increasing the cost of that. And, thankfully it was a pretty prevalent topic during the COVID timelines. A lot of customers understood that. It wasn't something that we liked having to do, but it was important and everybody was dealing with it.
Yeah, no, I think those are great tips and great general advice for getting through something like that. And last question that's kind of focused on you, I guess, but what does your typical day look like? What's kind of consistent on a day in, day out basis, and what maybe is less predictable or changes by the day?
Yeah, so in my role as CFO, it generally varies as you would expect, day by day. Even obviously with a month-end focus, the first couple of days of the month tend to be focused on trying to wrap up the prior month. But we have a pretty strong focus on not scheduling a whole lot of meetings on Mondays and Fridays. That allows us to focus on sort of digging in and getting work done. We have a GSD and get stuff done, type of culture. And you can't just spend your entire week in meetings. You have to have time to get in and drill into the details and figure out what's going on. So Mondays and Fridays tend to be pretty good where you can focus on those, whether it's quarterly rocks, maybe doing a deep dive on a topic, maybe building out a model. My typical day will start, I'll come in and analyze our cash position at any given day. And how are we doing with that? What are big wrinkles that are coming on the horizon? Trying to just assess where we're at. Tuesdays through Thursdays tend to be a lot of focus on our L10 meetings that I mentioned earlier, where we meet with the different departments, maybe sync up on outstanding issues, try to, collaborate on some of our rocks, some of our goals, and really just, hey, what are you running into? What are some things we need to be aware of? Let's cascade information throughout the company so that we can all anticipate when something happens. That's a pretty typical day.
Awesome. And shifting a little bit to technology and your use of NetSuite, since Packer Fastener is a NetSuite customer. First off, just how would you summarize how Packer Fastener uses NetSuite?
Yeah, I would say that NetSuite is our one source of the truth. We've got all of our financials, our inventory, sales, and purchasing. All that detail lives in NetSuite. We've got about 400,000 items in our inventory, so the nuts and bolts and all the different equipment or product that we buy and sell for our customers. Any given point, there's about 30,000 of them on the shelf in our different distribution centers. So that's a lot to manage, and NetSuite really gives us a good way to harness all that. We use the CRM functionality for maintaining our customer relationships. We book all of our sales orders in NetSuite, which flows to the WMS warehouse management, where the orders get picked. We use the purchasing modules for ordering stock from our vendors. Of course, all the financial operations in the back end. And so we interface to we have a third-party transportation management system where our freight business manages all of their load data. We've built an interface between that system and NetSuite, so there's data flowing there. We use some API integrations. We use a number of suite app integrations, so our sales tax, our corporate card spend management. We use UPS for our shipping. So it's really that sort of hub where all the data gets collected, the different processes almost entirely will flow soup to nuts through NetSuite. So it's really just that main core system that we've got.
Yeah, so obviously you're using NetSuite for a lot of stuff. Any particular features or modules that stand out to you as especially valuable or maybe like better than systems you've used in the past, something that NetSuite does better or kind of pleasantly surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for the cloud and the availability on a cloud solution there was something that we certainly hadn't had here, nor in my prior points in my career was the main ERP system, a cloud solution. So that's really helpful for us. The sort of the app store functionality, like I mentioned, the suite apps where you can take a third-party solution, kind of like you would load an app on your phone. You can load these apps in and this pre-built customization. Probably the most impactful, I think, is shortly after we went live with our implementation, we started to poke around on, it's probably 15 months ago, how can we start to utilize or play in this artificial intelligence, machine learning space. So we were looking at other tools that weren't NetSuite, but really sort of focused on that specific niche. And around that time, I actually had attended SuiteWorld in Las Vegas and heard the pitch on NSAW, NetSuite Analytics Warehouse. So signed on to that about a month later, ran through the implementation. We went live with that earlier this year. And that's been really helpful for creating visuals on our business, analyzing budget versus actuals, doing KPI analysis. It's easy to harness that data, quickly build out whether it's a graph or a table or just massaging all this data on sort of ad hocs, but also creating these regular, repeatable analytics that will pop up. And just recently, the ability to take those graphs or KPIs and drop them on your NetSuite home dashboard it was made available for us. So that's been a really nice add-on in addition to the core of NetSuite. It's given us We're using some predictive capabilities in there, focusing on potential customer churn. We're looking at inventory stockouts, trying to just starting to scratch the surface on pricing optimization within the tool. So it's been a great fit for us for a lot of different reasons.
NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud financial system, is everything you need to grow all in one place. Financials, inventory, HR, and more. Make better decisions faster so you can do more and spend less. See how at netsuite.com/pod.
And just digging into NSAW a little bit, would you say it's giving you access to analytics you simply didn't have before? Is it just easier to get, the numbers that you already cared about?
Yeah, one of the cool things that the NSAW, of course, it pulls over data from the NetSuite ERP, but it also will allow you to either upload like a large, just a CSV upload. There's connectors with, I don't know, dozens and dozens of different solutions like Google Analytics or Salesforce or, lots of different pieces that will just connect out of the box. So it allows you to pull in non-NetSuite data and then merge all of that together in your analytics. So besides, we wanted a lot more budget to actual KPIs and graphs and visuals in the NetSuite ERP. So that gave us the ability to do that. We're incented in the company to how are we doing against our budget. So of course that's a big focus. People log in every morning. That's one of the things they want to see. And NetSuite Analytics Warehouse gave us that capability to build those visuals. Again, doing that ad hoc analysis where you say, somebody's asking me this question, or maybe a business user has a particular question that's very deep in the data. They can really just take NSAW and build out a visualization quickly, just kind of drag and drop all the data, run some filters on it, and all of a sudden you've got this really insightful analysis that you can use to manage your business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And zooming out a little bit from NetSuite and just thinking about technology, more big picture, what role do you see technology playing in the overall success of Packer Fastener?
I think we're looking at continuing to find ways that we can harness the data. We really want to be more efficient. We want to continue to grow significantly, but we recognize that we can't just hire people. So we can't hire people in a linear fashion compared to what our revenue growth is. Particularly in our back office functions, we need to be more efficient. We need to support the growth of that business without hiring an army of people to do it. And so our technology roadmaps really focus on that. The efficiency, artificial intelligence is starting to play a role in all that.
And digging into AI specifically, how do you see that changing the finance function specifically? Is it just a way to, like you said, not grow headcount at the same rate as the business is growing?
That's definitely part of it. Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't just extend to the finance teams. We're finding, I mentioned earlier, some of these predictive models. So the customer churn, we can get after, well, we notice this customer maybe is trailing off on some of their purchasing. We can get that in the hands of a salesperson that can then reach out to the customer and see if there's any issues that we need to address, or is there an opportunity? Maybe there's some variation in their business. There's again proactive nature there. The AI allows us to do some of that. There's potential inventory stockouts. So based on your trends, we expect that you will need this much inventory on your shelf. Based on the lead times, it looks like there might be a stockout. So you might want to advance that purchase another 2 or 3 days earlier so that you're not without the stock for your customers. So there's some of those. Obviously, the efficiency is important, but also then trying to be more strategic about how we approach a customer or a purchase that can really enhance us.
So I wanted to move into some questions about kind of talent and the workforce as you're a CFO. So, what that looks like in the finance function. One thing that's obviously been happening for quite a while at this point is more automation across accounting and finance. What do you think the future of these functions will look like with increased automation, AI, all these things that are either here or coming on the horizon?
I have a standing topic in my finance L10 where I asked my team to bring in items they've seen. It's been out there for about 5 or 6 months now. I've had this on a standing agenda item, and I'm asking them to bring in, what have you seen in the AI space? How is that something that will impact either our day-to-day jobs or things even outside of work or your personal life? How is AI going to impact those? So the goal of that is really twofold. One, that we can be on the forefront and maybe capture something that's new out there that really might enhance our business, make us more profitable, more efficient as a team. But then additionally, trying to get folks comfortable with this instead of being scared about this coming wave of artificial intelligence or technology is let's embrace it. Let's see what it's doing. Let's make ourselves better. Let's not be caught surprised by these advancements here. And to the extent that we're looking at signals out there, we can again be positioned to not just be afraid of what it's going to do, but capitalize on it.
And so your thought is if your staff can kind of understand this and what it could do for them and how it could help them, that can help lessen some of that fear about what does this mean for my job or my future.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that a lot of times with any kind of change management. This is obviously a huge impact. And, if you're reading a lot of the information out there, it's not far-fetched to think that a lot of this will, replace some of the work that we do today. And I expect it will, but trying to be intentional about that and assessing that and then talking about it as a team. And you can say, hey, look, this is going to do maybe our variation, our flux analysis on our financials. Maybe there's a generative tool out there that will allow us to just do that by typing in what happened with our P&L this month. That takes away some of the work that somebody's doing, but then we can redeploy that time into other areas, maybe higher value, more important, building out the profitability of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. As you think about that transition and things changing, what skills do you think are really going to become must-haves for people that work in finance or accounting?
Yeah, analytical skills. And I mean, that might seem like an obvious answer because a lot of financial work has always been analytical, but the folks that have been in financial functions that have just been used to, I'm going to enter this transaction and I'm going to type in a transaction and I'm going to, write a manual check, like a physical check, things like that they've been in this, maybe low tech financial roles, really embracing an analytical mindset, intellectual curiosity. So again, mentioned, what's going on in the AI world, but approaching it with, curiosity instead of fear. I think those are really important. Creativity to craft prompts when you're trying to utilize like an AI tool, like a ChatGPT or a Claude, even within NetSuite, some of the generative AI functions. How can I maximize the information that this tool is going to present for me? And if I need to be creative about how I craft that question or that query to the model. So you need that intellectual curiosity, the creativity there, really focusing on efficiency, mastering data, right? Anybody who's got a really strong background with Excel, if they, sort of the advanced features of Excel, a lot of the formulas and data manipulation, people that have those skill sets will translate well into the world, I think, and, capitalizing on the efficiency of AI.
So you mentioned earlier how competitive it is to get hired at your company. When you're looking to hire someone in your department, in the finance department, what are the skills you're looking for? Is it that same stuff you just mentioned pretty much? Are there any talent gaps you see right now that you're like, this is a priority for me because this is a gap I need to fill in my broader team?
Yeah, there's a little bit of, as we increase, there's, again, as we continue to grow in our geographic footprint, there's some skills that will help support that. So multi-state payroll, multi-state, sales tax, things like that are important. But ultimately, I think somebody who's proactive versus reactive is important as I'm analyzing, if I needed to hire somebody on my team. I'd rather not report yesterday's news. I'd rather influence and inform decisions as they're being made instead of just sort of, scorekeeping and distributing the box score at the end of the game. I want to be able to influence. Those are really skills I would love to see in folks that maybe we're looking at hiring.
So, whenever we talk about the workforce and talent in finance, it feels like it always comes back to the shortage because for years now there's been a shortage in this field. It's obviously something people talk about a lot when it comes to this. Are there any strategies or approaches that you've found to be really effective in attracting and retaining the right people that are going to help your business do the things it needs to do and deliver real value as a department?
Yeah, when I think about why people leave jobs or why they stay, I think certainly, a balance of everybody's got a personal life and nobody wants to, work 20 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that is just sort of basic. We want to make sure that people leave. We've got a pretty good rate here of folks, packing up their desks by 4 or 5 o'clock at night, and it's pretty quiet here. There's really not a whole lot of work on weekends or at nights. So finding that balance in a lot of these tools we talked about earlier can help manage that. I think providing opportunities for folks to grow in a company like ours that's growing so rapidly, there's a lot of maybe I want to switch hats, maybe I want to try a different role or a different team. Giving that opportunity for people that are on the team here. Again, trying to treat people fairly, trying to have a fun work environment, trying to compensate people fairly. All of those are important, I think, to retaining and attracting folks onto my team.
And do you feel like the automation and embracing technology that you've talked about that can also help pull people in because they're like, oh, I'll be doing more exciting work here. This sounds more interesting than my last job because, I won't have to do a lot of these manual, mundane things that I might have had to do at my last company. Do you feel like that can help pull people in?
Yeah, I mean, those people that are really embracing that are definitely people that I would love to hire because they're going to just buy right into the approach out of the gates, right? They're going to be hungry for it. They're going to, look in that intellectual curiosity that I mentioned. They're going to embrace that as a way to enhance their career and the company.
And then to wrap up here, I wanted to ask some questions about 2025. It's right around the corner, and will be 2025 when people listen to this. But as a CFO, what are some of your top priorities for 2025?
So we continue as a business. We have very significant growth plans for 2025. We recently wrapped up our strategy sessions where we established our 3-year plan and some very high level goals for 2025. So again, as you and I are speaking here, we're working through our budgeting process, and that includes mapping out. We have really large revenue growth, and that needs to be supported with a lot of different expansions in various parts of the business. So maybe it's hiring folks, maybe it's finding new geographic locations and supporting that. So a lot of that is, cash is a big thing for us. So in 2025, we're actually rolling out additional cash management tools, both things within NetSuite. Again, we're looking for some of the enhancements that will probably be there early in 2025, but also some of the maybe offline models that we're doing to capture some of the, not just what does cash look like for the next week or two, but what does cash look like, for the next 3 years. And as we anticipate what our capitalization models are, we want to make sure that we've got good numbers and then try to hold ourselves accountable to that.
I mean, cash and cash flow is important for obvious reasons, I guess, but why is that so central to your mission? Is it thinking about how much cash we're going to have to put back into the business and then what can we potentially do with that? Is it that type of thinking that drives, the focus on what does our cash flow look like, not just like you said in the near term, but years down the line?
Yeah, so interest rates, of course, have
Yeah.
surfaced as more of an issue over the last 2 years, right? So that's a big portion. If you're going to borrow money to fuel your growth, you're going to be paying an interest on that. We're anticipating additional drops in the interest rates here over the short term, but we expect higher rates for longer. So focusing on the efficient use of our cash really will help us be able to take all of the growth that we want. So when you think about when you grow a business as fast as we're growing, we have a significant growth in our receivables. And then, of course, with the interest rates, a lot of customers want to take longer to pay you. So you're fronting out a lot of cash to your customers. And of course, the vendors don't love you paying them longer. So you have to manage that difference there between fronting cash out for receivables and paying your vendors. There's a delta there. So it's the cash conversion cycle. It's inventory as we expand the number of offerings in our catalog, but also we're popping up different regional distribution centers, and each one of those requires an initial investment for shelving and the initial inventory in those locations, and then as their customers grow within those distribution centers, their inventory grows. So all of that is cash that you're fronting out there too. So really, as you think about growing a business, cash really is key. You really can't grow without that positive cash flow. So focusing on that as the data and the tooling gives us insight into that, allows us to maybe measure and be intentional about how we grow, where we grow, when we grow. It's all just tied together.
And as you think about the new year, are there any particular challenges or just things that you're trying to proactively keep a close eye on that you kind of had top of mind of here's things that we need to look out for, I guess, as we start the new year?
Again, we're really focused on a lot of the tariffs. So as we're recording this, we're just after the election here, and so there's a lot of conversation around will there be a lot of tariffs, particularly as we move into 2025, that will significantly impact a lot of our inventory that we purchase, originates overseas. So we're analyzing how that can impact our business. Again, we expect that there will be a healthy growth in the economy in 2025. We'd love to ride that wave as much as we can. We find our value proposition to our customers as something that continues to resonate with them. A lot of our Midwest work ethic is something that our customers really appreciate and value. And so trying to capitalize on that to, one, make our customers more successful, provide opportunities for our employees, and then to grow our business, our more profitable growth in our business. Those are all very, very important to us in 2025.
So we've talked about AI quite a bit today, but I want to specifically ask about reskilling and upskilling with your workforce. Are there any plans to try to do some of that, try to, up the skills of your workforce to adapt to these new tools, this new environment? And what might that look like if you do have some of those initiatives?
Yeah, so some of it's a little more organic with that. I mentioned we're talking about different AI tools within my team. And so a lot of that is we just onboarded a new vendor bill tool where it does the OCR, it captures the bill, and there's sort of artificial intelligence baked into that, right? It's analyzing. It can link a vendor bill with a purchase order, analyze all the line items on there. So having the team embrace that is really it's not like an intentional, you're going to go to this course to learn about this. You spend some time onboarding, maybe working with the vendor to kind of get set up there, but then it's small little day-to-day wins to capitalize on that. But then supplemental to that is focusing on what are some other tools out there. Maybe how are you using maybe something like Microsoft Copilot or a ChatGPT to enhance what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Those are specific areas we'd like to focus on as a team. We're really, again, trying to stretch Microsoft's Copilot. We're looking to stretch NetSuite's AI tools. How can we use those? And as we learn about opportunities, sometimes it's a deep dive to say, okay, this is what it's doing. Maybe you're sitting around pinging ideas about creative ways to use this tool. Within our team, we have an AI think tank that meets twice a month to talk about, hey, what are we seeing out there? And this is more at a leadership strategic level, but what are we seeing out there in the AI space? Are there things that we need to, we're looking at creating an AI 101 course where we can deploy that out to our teams and have them just to start to understand some of the key terms, the concepts, look for them to embrace that. I think that's enterprise-wide a great way for us to look to employees to embrace it.
Yeah, some really good ideas there on what you can do to try to bring your workforce up to speed. So another thing that people have been talking about for years is the CFO role becoming more strategic and just more prominent, right? It's a more prominent position in the C-suite. What are you doing, or what are you maybe focused on continuing to do to increase alignment and collaboration with other leaders across other departments in the business?
Yeah, so we had a strategy session. Again, we have an annual strategy session, like a 2-day session, and it was in the fall of 2023, and had a great conversation with the rest of the leadership group. And they said, some of the folks said it'd be really helpful to meet with you on a one-on-one basis, on a regular cadence. So we set those up, late into 2023, and now we've been on it essentially for about a year now. And that's a great way for us to, we'll meet in, we call them huddle rooms with a TV, and you pop up a screen and you start to look at some of the data, some of the financials. You start to talk about, hey, how are you seeing this evolve? Or just really that really open dialogue. I think we all approach those conversations with some humility to say, is there things in my team that we can improve on to make ourselves more efficient? And sometimes it's taking, past experience where I've seen this work at other companies, and maybe introducing that to some of my peers as a way to make their teams more efficient or focus on, tracking against goals, things like that. So everybody kind of brings that humility to the conversation. You meet on it regularly, and I think it's been really fruitful. It's been really good for us to have those connections.
Can you share any specific benefits or results of what's come out of those conversations and that kind of intentional collaboration?
Yep. So things like metrics, we really track statistics in the organization. And that was something really that was fairly new when I joined the company, is let's specifically track certain key metrics, focus on like the number of sales folks that we have on our team, or just the number of employees in general, and how are we managing or assessing, maybe our revenue per employee or revenue per salesperson, or maybe our profit or our efficiency within certain functions in the team. How effective are we at utilizing the workforce? Those are all areas that we've gotten a lot of traction on, and not just measuring what it is today, but maybe we set a plan. And if we want to meet this particular budget objective, we need to stick to a particular plan and timeline. So maybe we hold off on hiring another person because we don't necessarily have the revenue to support that. And it's just a lot of really good dialogue to set a plan, monitor against it, and then take action.
And when it comes to technology, any specific technology initiatives that you have in mind, or at least are considering for 2025, or any goals for what you want maybe existing technology to be able to do in the next year?
Yeah, we are on the front end of implementing an EDI solution, which is not exactly groundbreaking technology, but for us, it's important. We're hearing a lot of our customers that are looking for that as a way to, again, be more efficient on their end, provide more timely, consistent data flows. So that'll be an initiative. We're using one of the NetSuite called plugins to utilize that EDI. We think that can really be an improvement for us and for our partners.
Great. And Brian, as we wrap up here, any final thoughts or takeaways for other CFOs, for aspiring finance people, for anyone out there trying to run a business successfully?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I have the perfect wisdom. Just humility, intellectual curiosity. Those are like key attributes of a finance leader, and just trying to focus on people and efficiency. I think they're going to serve any CFO well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the time, Brian. Really appreciate it.
You bet, Ian. Thanks.
I always find it fascinating to hear about the inner workings of a fast-growing, highly successful company such as Packer Fastener. And we're so lucky that Brian was willing to provide that peek behind the curtain. I think there's a lot of business leaders who could learn from the framework that's powered Packer Fastener's rise. The intentional approach to setting and then tracking strategic goals with the help of a coach is one part of the business's approach that could help a lot of different companies. I want to thank Brian for joining us on this episode of the podcast. I also want to thank our editing crew at Oracle and, as always, all of you for tuning in. If you want more episodes just like this one, make sure you subscribe to our channel and give us a rating and review. Thanks so much, and talk soon.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.